So today we're going to look in Genesis, and I want to look at some of the ways that man messes things up in their own lives, and that gives the enemy a foothold into their lives. And so starting in Genesis chapter 2, and if you look at verse 8 and 9, it says, and I'm reading from the New International Version, "Now the Lord God had planted a garden in the east in Eden, and there he put the man he had formed. The Lord God made all kinds of trees to grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil." And the thing I want you to see here is, first of all those trees that he created that were good for food and pleasing to the eye, that those all existed. There was all kinds of them. And the second thing I want you to see is that in the middle of the garden there was two trees. There was a tree of life and there was a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that's going to be important as we go deeper into this. So man puts them there, and verse 15 he says, or God puts them there.
What chapter was it? I'm sorry.
Genesis chapter 2,
Okay.
verse 8.
Okay.
And then in Genesis 2:15, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to care for it. And the Lord God commanded the man, "You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat of it, you will surely die." And I talked to someone that studied the Hebrew quite a bit on that one, and they said one way that you could really interpret that is, surely you will die. It's like dying you will die. It's like on that day when you take that, in the King James I think it says on that day, right? Who's got a King James that can read that verse?
Bernie does.
Or a New King James will put.
Which verse do you want read?
Verse 17.
17, okay. "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die."
Yeah. And because some people are like, well, wait, he didn't die that day. But if you see it from the Hebrew word perspective of dying you will die, it's like he started dying that day. It took a long time. It took hundreds of years.
Yes.
Now we're a lot better at it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that don't even make it, 40, 50 years. But back then, they didn't. But then as they started seeing more and more death, as disease started to come in, as corruption started to become more and more, now we see lifespans that are shorter. Although with some of the modern medicine, they do all these things. But anyway, the important thing is that he tells them, don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because on that day you're going to start dying, or surely you will die. And that was the command. All the other trees, he said, you can eat of. And he put man there to work the garden. Wouldn't that have been fun to be able to work in that situation with no weeds, no disease? John, could you imagine? No disease, no problems. The cows, when it's time to give birth, just, no issues. Everything's good. Everything's healthy. Don't have a bunch of weeds around. Probably wouldn't even have to cut hay and stuff because everything would just be producing so good. They could just go and graze. And man, that would have been something. Yeah, good, yeah. Because remember what happens after. It's going to be by the sweat of your brow. You're going to do it.